In this video, we're going to learn about transferring stitches from the machine to the software. First, I'll show you how to do this for the B990. Switch to sewing mode, select decorative stitches, and select the stitch that you want to transfer. Next, switch to embroidery mode and select the personal folder, and you'll see that stitch is now in your personal folder. Bring it on the screen and click on Save. Type in the stitch number and confirm. Select the USB, select the stitch, and confirm. On other embroidery machines, it's basically the same process. You will start out in sewing mode, go to the decorative stitches, and click on the folder, and then select the stitch you wish to transfer. Go to the home screen and embroidery mode, and select your personal folder. Select the stitch, click on the file and save the stitch. Choose the USB option and confirm. You have three options when you bring in a stitch from the machine to the software. First of all, your pattern stitches can be created from a grade C or grade D stitch file. Pattern stitches can also be converted to a grade A stitch file by digitizing over the pattern. Or the third option is pattern stitches can be converted to grade A using artwork canvas to convert them to artwork, and then you convert them back to stitches. You'll learn about each of these different ways. It's always a good idea to watch the stitch out through Stitch Player. It is a good idea to calibrate your screen if you're using an external monitor. This helps when you have to measure the spacing between the stitches. First, go to metric mode, and then go to settings and calibrate screen. Measure across the dialog box and enter the width of the dialog box, and then measure the height of the dialog box and put that measurement in the height and click OK. And now I'm going to switch back to the US measurement. Select Open, navigate to your USB stick, and select the stitch that you want to open. You'll see that this stitch was transferred with a 790 and was not named. It makes it a lot easier if you make note of the stitch number, and you can actually rename that stitch to be the correct stitch number. Select the stitch and open the stitch. This is a grade C design, or you can open it as a grade D as well. I'm going to click OK, and when I zoom in, you can see the stitch. Click on Stitch Player to watch the design stitch out. You'll see that it started here at the center and it's ending at the center, and stitches are backtracking over one another. Close Stitch Player, and if you select the design and click on Reshape, you'll have lots of reshape points with no information about the start or stop. So that's why it is important that you watch it stitch out if you want to create the stitch using either a grade C or a D. I'll select the stitch, go to Settings, and Create Pattern. I have already created a pattern set called Machine Stitches, but if you need to create that folder, click on Create and type in Machine Stitches and click OK. I'll go ahead and cancel that, and I'll select my Machine Stitch folder. I'm going to call this by the number, and I'm going to do 707, and dash and a C, which I'm going to use for the grade C design. When I click OK, the status bar prompts me to enter the start point. I want to click where that design starts and go straight down and click where it ends. And I get a message that that pattern has been created, and I'll click OK. Now you can delete that stitch because it is now saved as part of your system. Let's go ahead and look at the second method of creating a grade A design. Once again, I'll click on Open Design. And for this one, I'm going to select this zigzag stitch and I'll click on Open. Again, it is telling me that this is a non-native format. I'll just click OK. And then I'm going to zoom in and I want to press the T on the keyboard to change to design view. And I also want to activate my needle points. Now I'm using a white screen, so I'm going to go to Design and Background and Display Colors, and I'm going to change my needle points to a color so they will be very visible. And I'll click OK. And you can see that there's a needle penetration at the left side, at the middle, and at the right side. I want to be sure and set my stitch length when I digitize over this design at such a length that it will not create a needle penetration in between these 2 points. Again, I want to switch to metric in order to measure. I'm going to press M on the keyboard and I will measure the longest stitch, which is probably about here. And you can see it's 4.8 millimeters. So I want to make my stitch length at least 5 millimeters. I'll press Escape again to get rid of that. I'll open up Object Properties, go to my Outline Stitch tab. I'm going to be using a single stitch and I'm going to change the length to slightly longer than the longest stitch. And I'll click OK. I'll select the design and I want to right click and I want to lock that because I don't want to accidentally move this. Again, we can watch the design stitch out and you can see it starts in the center and then comes back over and then alternates side to side. That gives you an idea of how to digitize the stitch. I'll close Stitch Player. I want to select the Open Object tool, the single outline, and a contrast color. I'm going to start in the center and I'm doing left clicks and I'm going to just click over this design. I go over and then in this case I don't backtrack right over it. I come back to this point that's a little bit lower. It's just that very first stitch that needs to have that backtrack stitch. That way you can start at center and go out. Now I'm almost done with this design. If you create a point that you need to change, you can press the backspace key just like with any kind of digitizing. And when I reach the end of this, I will press enter and my stitches will be generated. And there's one more stitch down to the white plus sign and I'll press enter. Now I'll go over to my color film and I want to select that design and you'll first unlock it and then you can press delete because we do not need that design in the background any longer. So I'm going to right click and unlock and then select it and delete it. And you can see the stitch is now generated. I can press T on the keyboard and my stitch is ready to save to the software. I'll select the stitch, go to Settings and Create Pattern. And this stitch number is 449, and I'm going to place a dash and then the letter A, indicating that it is a grade A stitch. I'll click OK, and I have already created this, but I'm going to go ahead and write over it. I'll click at the top of the design and then at the bottom and click OK. Now, what are some advantages of having grade A designs? First of all, when I select Reshape, I have a start and a stop that I can change on this stitch. So I can move it to the top and put the stop at the bottom. I have reshape points that are easy to change and move and delete or add if I need to. And I can resize the stitch without losing the object properties. So those are the advantages of having a grade A saved pattern. Now this next method is an easier method, but it doesn't always work for stitches that are satin stitches or stitches that have multiple crossovers. I'll click on Open Design, and I'm going to choose this stitch 1212 and click on Open. Now, when I play Stitch Player, this is pretty much a straightforward stitch. And you can see it is a grade C because I didn't change it in options. So if I create this stitch, it's going to be fine. But if I want to do any kind of reshaping, it is a grade C design. And if I want the advantages of having a grade A design, I can either digitize over it, or this is a more simple way. I can click on Convert Embroidery to Artwork. Vector is chosen. I click OK. The design is then transferred from an embroidery design to artwork, and I'll switch to artwork canvas in this process. And there is the stitch as artwork. All I have to do is click on Convert Artwork to Embroidery, and now it has stitches. When I select it, I have my start, I have my stop, and I have any reshape points that I can change as well. I could also change the stitch length if I wanted to change the stitch length. Now let's create a pattern. I'm going to activate the grid, and you can see that the start point and the stop point are right on a grid line. I'll press Escape, select the stitch, and then once again go to Settings and Create Pattern. My machine stitch folder shows, and I type in the stitch number, and I'm going to put dash and the letter A, meaning it's going to be a pure art stitch. I click OK. I have created this before, so I'm going to overwrite this stitch. I'll click at the top and I'll click at the end, and my stitch has been created, and I'll just click OK. This next pattern I am going to show has kind of a different scenario, and I'm going to open that stitch. We're going to use that same process again. I'll select the stitch, I'll click on Convert, again click OK, and then I'll convert it back. If I press 0 on the keyboard, the stitch will appear, and you'll see now that that stitch is now a grade A stitch. I'll click on Reshape. I've got my start point, I've got my stop point. I'll activate the grid. You can see that those are both right on that grid line, which is important for having your stitches line up. I'll select the stitch, go to Settings and Create Pattern, and this is stitch 1620, and I'm going to do dash and A again because I created an art file from it. I'm going to click OK. Again, I've created this stitch before, I'm going to go ahead and override it. I'll click at the start point and I will click at this stop point, and it's been created. I can now open a new file and let's look at how we're going to create using some of these stitches. First of all, I want to open a file to show you some of the problems that we may have when we use pattern stitches. And this is from the stitch that was digitized. And when I use a rectangle to create a pattern stitch, sometimes I get a gap and it doesn't close. So this pattern I created with 4 pattern runs with the Open Object tool and just digitize them in 4 separate units. That's going to give you greater control to either increase the length of the line a bit or decrease it or move it a little bit, maybe increase the size of the stitch, and you can get a better frame that way. So just be aware that if you have a gap that you don't like in your pattern, rather than trying to figure out the spacing or the resizing the rectangle, you can easily digitize 4 straight lines that come together as a rectangle. I wanted to also show you how to work with a pattern that has an inset start point. I'll select the Open Object tool and I'm going to right click on my pattern stitch. I'll go to Select and I want to select from my machine stitches that I created, and I'm going to use this 1620-A stitch. I'll click OK, and I want to leave the object properties open, so I'm going to click on Apply, and I've got the Open Object tool. I'm going to hold down the Control key and click again and press Enter. And you can see that the stitches don't come together. And I need to change the spacing to make this work. So the first thing I need to do is measure the distance between the start and stop point. I can do that by adding a guideline and then moving it so that it is right along that edge of that stitch. And I'll do the same for the stop point. Now I am in metric measuring, a measurement system, and I want to remain in metric. And as you zoom in, you can fine tune this a little bit. And I'm going to press M on the keyboard and then measure from one guideline, and see how the guidelines turned red? That's because I have Snap to Guidelines on. And I've got 14.01 millimeters. I'm going to press Escape twice, and I'm going to change my spacing to 14.01. And I'll click Apply. And I didn't have the design selected, so let me select it first and then reopen Object Properties and then type in 1401 and apply that. And now you can see how these stitches come together. You have your up and down arrows so that you can perfect that a little bit, but that will make your pattern continuous. So you can do that with any stitches where the start point isn't exactly equal to the stop point.